I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself this. Have you ever felt like you're trying so hard but still stuck somehow? You've got big dreams, you work hard, you're learning watching motivational videos, reading books, listening to podcasts, but somehow your life still feels the same. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. I've been there too. I remember 12 years ago, I was still working a part-time job, living in a tiny rented apartment on the outskirts of Boston. Every morning, the first thought in my head was, how am I going to pay rent this month? And the strange thing is, I was still learning about business, listening to Tony Robbins, reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I had the knowledge, but nothing was changing. And then one day I realized the problem wasn't out there. It was in the quiet beliefs running inside my own mind. You can't live a life that's bigger than the beliefs you secretly hold inside. It sounds simple, but that truth completely shifted my life. And I've seen it over and over again in the hundreds of clients I've worked with, from young founders to single moms starting over after heartbreak. One client, Andrew, had been working in IT for 8 years. Smart, hardworking, natural leadership vibe. But he could never break past the 80K a year ceiling. Every time a promotion came up, he'd step back. Because there was this voice in his head, I'm not good enough to lead others. What held him back wasn't his skills. It was the old mental operating system quietly running in the background, pulling him back into his comfort zone. Napoleon Hill once said, "You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are." And that's the truth. It's not your desire that shapes your life. It's what you believe you deserve. You could want $1 million, but if deep down you still believe you're only worthy of just enough, you'll unconsciously reject every opportunity that could bring you closer to abundance. You'll procrastinate, you'll sabotage, you'll quit halfway just to keep your reality aligned with the inner map you've always lived by. I want you to picture this. You could build the most beautiful house, but if the foundation is shaky, it's going to collapse sooner or later. Your mind is the foundation. The beliefs you carry each day decide whether you're building a castle or just a temporary shack to get by. And if you don't upgrade your inner operating system, no tool, no strategy, no business plan is going to make your wealth last. I once studied cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and dived deep into the subconscious mind. And one thing that really blew my mind was this: the subconscious doesn't know what's true, it only believes what's repeated. So if you've ever heard yourself say, I'm not good with money, I can't be successful like other people, bad luck always hits me when I try to start a business, then congrats, you've been reprogramming yourself daily with limiting beliefs. But here's the good news. You can start saying new things like, I'm learning how to master my finances. I am worthy of success. I'm getting closer every day to the life I choose. And little by little, your subconscious will update. And when it does, your behavior, your energy, your decisions, your results, they'll all begin to shift. You don't need to be rich to think like a millionaire. You need to think like a millionaire to become one. And no, it's not about faking it or showing off. It's about showing up with the responsibility, the vision, and the values of the person you're becoming. You can't wait for the world to approve you before you believe in yourself. You believe first and let the world reflect that belief back to you. So here's what I want you to remember. You are not who you used to be. You are who you choose to become. In every thought, every action, every tiny choice you make today. And if today you start choosing a new belief, even the smallest one, you've already stepped out of the average. You're rewriting the map of your life. And that is exactly where the millionaire journey begins. You know what? A lot of people think they need more motivation, more opportunities, or just one lucky break to change their lives. But the truth is, what they really need isn't more of anything. It's the courage to let go of a few things, letting go of old limitations, letting go of outdated definitions of who they think they are, letting go of those worn-out standards they've been living by for way too long. I once worked with a client, a single mom in her 30s juggling 2 jobs. She came to me with tired eyes and said, I want a better life, but I don't even know where to start. And you know what? We didn't start with a financial goal. We didn't start with a business plan. We started with one simple question. What are you tolerating in your life that you know deep down you don't want anymore? That's where real transformation begins. Because here's the truth. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you tolerate. In psychology, we call this your standard of living threshold, kind of like a mental thermostat. Just like the temperature in a room, if it's set to 70 degree around 21ers, then no matter how hot or cold it gets outside, the system adjusts to stay around that point. Your mind works the same way. If your inner standard is, I just need to get by, then, even when big opportunities show up, you'll unconsciously pull yourself back down to just enough. Until you raise your internal standard, everything you do will be temporary. So be real with yourself. Are you tolerating a job that no longer lights you up? Are you in a relationship where deep down you know you deserve more? Are you putting off something that you know if you actually did it, your life would never be the same? I'm not asking these things to make you feel guilty. I'm asking because I know right behind every painful truth is a powerful new beginning. Living an extraordinary life doesn't require you to be superhuman. It just requires you to stop settling. There was a season in my life where everything on the outside looked fine. Income was good, relationships were solid, life looked together. But inside I felt hollow because I knew I was living below my real potential. I had chosen comfort over truth. And one morning I looked at myself in the mirror and asked if today was my last day, could I honestly be proud of how I've been living? And the answer was no. That moment, it changed everything. I burned the backup plan and I chose to step into the unknown, the space where no one could guarantee what would happen. And maybe this is that moment for you. So let me ask you, what's your mindset to right now? What temperature are you living at? What are you putting up with that deep down, you don't want anymore? Have you really chosen a higher standard for yourself yet? Let me remind you, no one's going to show up and hand you a brilliant life. You have to demand it from yourself first. I'm not talking about blind ambition. I'm talking about soul-level self-respect. You deserve a life that's rich, full, and meaningful, but only if you choose it. Every single day, no waiting, no postponing, no asking for permission. A millionaire isn't someone who just has a lot of money. A millionaire is someone who fully owns who they are. And that begins when you raise your inner standards, even just one notch today. Because belief alone isn't enough. You have to live your belief so the world knows you're serious. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever known exactly what you needed to do, but still kept putting it off? Not because you didn't have time, not because you weren't smart enough, but because deep down you were still waiting for inspiration? I used to believe I had to feel ready before I could start. But then I learned something in some of the darkest, loneliest moments of my life. Successful people don't wait for inspiration to act. They act and the inspiration follows. When you take consistent action, even small steps each day, you send a powerful signal to the universe and to yourself, I'm serious about this dream. One of my clients, an aspiring author, once told me, I just can't write when I'm not inspired. So I asked him, do you brush your teeth every day? He laughed, of course. And do you only brush when you feel inspired? We both laughed. And in that moment, he got it. Writing isn't about waiting for inspiration. It's about commitment, just like your health, your relationships, your purpose. You don't wait until you feel good to take care of them. You do it because you chose to. So if you're waiting for motivation or the perfect moment or some kind of cosmic sign, let me say this with all the love I have, you'll be waiting forever. Millionaires, the real ones who live differently, they don't chase inspiration. They follow standards. They wake up early, not because they're excited. They study every day, not because it's always fun. They do it because they've chosen to live as someone greater. Here's what neuroscience tells us. Your brain doesn't know whether you're actually ready. It just gets used to what you repeat. So if you keep waiting for inspiration and doing nothing, your brain learns. Oh, when things get uncomfortable, we stop. But if you start even when you don't feel like it and keep going, your brain rewires itself. Discipline replaces motivation, and soon you enter a new world, one where you're no longer average. You become unshakable. I remember the early days of building my career. No one watched my videos. I filmed alone. I wrote alone. And some days I'd think, who even needs to hear this? But I kept going every single day. Not because I thought I was amazing, but because I knew every action was a brick, and I was building the person I was becoming. And one day, my video reached someone. then another, and another. And now I'm sitting here talking to you, not because I got lucky, but because I made a commitment to the vision I saw long before anyone else saw it. If you want to become a millionaire, you can't act like the average person. The average person waits for inspiration. Successful people build an ecosystem that makes action non-negotiable because they know belief doesn't just live in your mind. It lives in your daily actions, no exceptions. You can't dream of an extraordinary life and still live by ordinary habits. I know you've got this, not because I'm the only one who believes in you, but because I've been exactly where you are. And I know once you commit, the rest will follow. So if today you're ready to commit first and let life rise up to meet that choice, comment below, I take action, no inspiration needed. Let that be your first brick. Tomorrow add another. And soon, you'll look around and realize you're living like a true millionaire from the inside out. I want you to imagine this. You've just started changing. You're waking up earlier. You're planning your days with more clarity. You're reading books, journaling, chasing a new idea, and then one day someone says, "You've been acting kind of weird lately. If success was that easy, everyone would do it. Come on, be realistic." Sound familiar? It's okay if those words hurt. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're human. I've been there too. When I quit my stable job to start building the life I truly wanted, my friends laughed. My family worried. Someone close to me even asked, "Who do you think you are to do something like that?" But here's the thing. They weren't really doubting me. They were speaking from their own inner limits. Because when you start living differently, you're not just facing your own fears, you're triggering theirs. You rise, they feel shaken. Because if you actually take off, then suddenly they have no excuse for staying on the ground. In psychology, we call this the mirror effect. When someone starts growing, they reflect back to others the parts they haven't dared to face yet. So the world's first reaction. It's usually not support, it's resistance, not because you're wrong, but because you've stepped outside the crowd and the crowd isn't ready yet. One of my clients, a young woman building her own wellness business, once broke down crying when her mom said, "How long are you going to waste time on this silly stuff?" And I didn't tell her to fight back. I told her, love yourself and love your mom too, but keep going, because truly successful people, they don't need to react. They just need to stay consistent. You don't need permission to succeed. You need consistency. Consistency when no one gets what you're doing. Consistency when the world calls you a dreamer. Consistency when you're the only one who sees the vision. You know why? Because the first person to see a dream is never the crowd. It's you. Only you. I remember one night sitting alone in my tiny room. I wrote this in my journal. I know no one understands me right now, but I don't need to be understood. I need to keep going. That was the night I truly grew up. Not in terms of achievement, but in mindset. Because a millionaire isn't the person with the most money in the room. They're the one who doesn't flinch when their belief gets tested. So now I ask you, are you willing to stand alone just to stay true to who you are? Do you love yourself enough not to need applause to keep moving? Are you clear enough not to be shaken by other people's opinions? You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You're not here to live a life that everyone understands. You're here to live a life that only you were born to create. Let your vision be louder than their doubts. Let your persistence answer every question. And never forget, people will believe in you the moment you no longer need them to. Have you ever imagined something beautiful and then felt like it was just way too far away? A dream home, a thriving career, a bank account that feels free, a version of you, confident, calm, magnetic. And then your current reality just kills the vibe. You think to yourself, why even dream when my life right now doesn't look anything like that? But here's one of the biggest secrets successful people know. You don't wait for the future to arrive before you start living like your future self. You live like that now so your future knows how to find you. This isn't about pretending, it's about how behavior shapes outcome. In behavioral science, there's a concept called acting as if. It means you show up as if you already are who you want to become. And when you do this consistently, your brain starts to re-identify you. And then things begin to shift. You start making decisions like someone who's already successful, saying no to things that no longer match your standards, Showing up with higher energy, clearer boundaries, deeper intention. And the universe, it responds. Opportunities show up. People show up. Momentum builds because you're finally on the right frequency. I still remember the days when I had just a few $100 in my account. I was living in a tiny rented room. No one knew who I was. But every morning I dressed like a CEO. I planned my day like I was running a company. I walked through the city like I had something big in motion, not because I was delusional, but because I chose to live ahead of the version I knew was coming as long as I didn't quit. If you're waiting to feel certain before you act, let me be honest, you might wait forever. But if today you decide to, speak like someone who's already confident. Ahri, work like you're already earning seven figures. Treat yourself like you're the most worthy person on this planet. Then the world will begin to shift its response to you. One of my students wanted to become a meditation teacher, but she had no certification, no students, and no one even knew her name. I told her, teach like there are already 1,000 people listening. So she did. She recorded her voice daily, posted videos regularly, created a space like she was running a full-on healing studio. 3 months later, she got invited to teach at a retreat in Costa Rica. Not because of luck, but because she lived like it was real, and then it became real. This is how people with a millionaire mindset live. They don't wait until they have enough to start. They start from a place of enoughness within. They write down the income they want, then behave like the person who earns it. They design their schedule like someone with financial freedom, then take the steps to grow into it. They think like a CEO long before they ever have an office, because they understand the inner world always leads the outer world. I don't need to know where you are right now. What I do want to know is, do you have the courage to act like your dream is already here? Because if you do, you might be amazed. When you see life start to move with you, let every action you take from today forward be a quiet declaration to the universe, I'm already that person. The rest, it's just a matter of time. I want to tell you something that might not sound sweet, but it could set you free. You don't need to feel inspired to do what you said you would. Inspiration is a gift, but discipline, that's an asset. And every real millionaire I've ever met, they don't rely on inspiration. They act like it's a ritual, a vow, a breath. One of my clients once told me I started off super fired up, but by day 3 I lost the spark. Everything felt heavy. I started wondering if I was even cut out for this path. I smiled and asked, do you brush your teeth every day? Yeah, of course. And do you always feel inspired to do it? She laughed, then paused. And that right there is where discipline walks in. Discipline isn't punishment. It's loyalty to your highest self. You don't need to feel high vibe every day. You just need to be honest with what you told yourself you'd do. Millionaires aren't different because they start better. They're different because they keep going. Stanford research shows people who can delay gratification tend to be more successful in finances, health, and relationships. In other words, the more you can keep doing the right thing even when results haven't shown up yet, the more likely you are to become someone others can only dream of. Discipline isn't force. It's an intentional choice repeated until it becomes your identity. I've had days waking up at 5 a.m., body sore, brain empty. No video going viral, no compliments, no motivation. But I still sat down. I wrote, I filmed, I shared. Why not because I felt excited, but because I had chosen to become someone uncommon. Discipline isn't a life of suffering. It's the deepest kind of love you can give yourself. When you say, I'll show up even when I'm tired. I'll keep going even when the results aren't there yet. I'll stay true even when no one else understands. That's how you build unshakable trust in yourself. A trust deeper than any motivational quote can offer. One of my clients used to be addicted to inspiration. He crushed it when he felt excited. But the moment the emotions dipped, he disappeared. I didn't tell him to chase motivation. I helped him build a system, a clear schedule. Reflect only after the action, not before. And every time he finished, no matter how small he wrote, I didn't give up. 3 months later, he was leading a team of 12. But what touched me the most was when he said, I'm no longer a slave to how I feel. I'm actually free. So if you want to become a millionaire, remember this. Don't let the ups and downs of your emotions control your consistency. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up every day with fierce loyalty to the future you've chosen. Do the work like you're building a bridge to your higher self. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you helped someone without expecting anything in return? Maybe you helped a stranger carry their bags, or just listened, really listened, while someone poured their heart out. Or maybe you said, "Have a great day" to someone, even though you were in a rush. Service is soft, but it's the most powerful form of wealth. It doesn't require money. It doesn't need a degree. It doesn't need a spotlight. All it takes is a heart that listens and hands that move. Napoleon Hill once said, "Whatever you give out will come back to you in ways you never expect." In business and success, in the journey to wealth, I've seen this truth play out again and again. Every truly prosperous person I've met had one thing in common. They helped others rise without rushing for a return. I remember the first time I posted a YouTube video. No views, no shares, no comments. But I kept going every single week because I told myself if just one person hears this and feels a little lighter, I'll keep doing it for them. By week 12, an email landed in my inbox. A girl wrote, "Your video saved me from giving up on life." I sat there stunned, and in that moment I understood real value grows quietly like seeds in the dark. One of my clients, a website designer, was obsessed with making money fast. She kept changing her strategy. She was stressed, impatient, constantly chasing results. I asked her, "When was the last time you really listened to your client's pain?" She went silent. Then something shifted. Instead of trying to close deals, she started helping her clients get clear on their dreams. 3 months later, her income tripled. Not because of tactics, but because her heart showed up. Look, you can master marketing, AI, copywriting, sales, all the smart stuff. But if service isn't at the core, your strategy will collapse the moment things get tough. On the flip side, if your existence is tied to lifting someone else up, life will carry you to places you never imagined. You don't need to wait until you've made millions to start serving. You just need a heart that still feels and hands that still care. True wealth doesn't begin in your bank account. It begins in that moment when you become the reason someone else feels more valuable. I once worked with a guy who ran a tiny coffee shop. He asked me, "How do I get more customers?" I asked him, "Do you actually remember the names of the people who show up every day?" He looked surprised. Then he gave it a shot. A week later, customers started coming back. One of them said, "No one's remembered my name in a long time." It wasn't a marketing campaign. It was service that actually touched someone. You weren't born just to take. You came here to give something that only you can give. Maybe it's the way your eyes hold space. Maybe it's the peaceful energy you bring into a room. Maybe it's the quiet consistency that makes others believe, if they can do it, maybe I can too. And when you serve from the heart, you become rich in a way no number could ever measure. Have you ever felt like the more you do, the more overwhelmed you get? The harder you chase success, the more exhausted you feel. Like you're pushing yourself so hard just to keep from falling behind. Yeah, I've been there too. And then one day in a quiet little room, no noise, just me and my breath, I realized something that changed my life. True wealth doesn't come from noise. It's born in silence. You see, we live in a world that's always busy. Busy being successful, busy proving something, busy being seen. But sometimes what your soul really needs is simply to stop, to slow down, to ask yourself, am I really living or just running? A study from Harvard found that 47% of our waking time, our minds are wandering, not present, not focused, not fully awake. And that wandering, it drains happiness. It clouds clarity. But people who spend just 10 minutes a day in silence, breathing consciously, coming back to themselves, make better decisions. They're more creative, more grounded emotionally. That's why the most sustainably successful people I've met all have a sacred space of stillness in their lives. There was a time I worked 16 hours a day. My videos were going viral. My followers were growing. My calendar was packed. From the outside, I looked like the definition of productive. But inside, I was exhausted. My mind felt like a radio stuck on 100 stations at once. I couldn't even hear myself anymore. Until one day I learned to just sit, be still, breathe, do nothing, just be with myself. One of my clients, a high-energy startup CEO, came to me completely burned out. His company was doing fine, but he was lost. We didn't talk strategy. I gave him one assignment, 30 minutes a day, no phone, no talking, no planning. Just sit with yourself. Week 1, he said, I'm going crazy. Week 3, he said, I'm starting to hear myself again. By month 2, he made a decision that completely transformed how his company operated, and that one shift saved them from a major crisis later on. Not because he learned something new, but because when the mind is clear, you already know what to do. You don't need a mountain retreat to find peace. You just need to turn down the noise for 15 minutes a day. So right here, write down what you feel, no judgment. Mirror, sit with the not knowing and let your heart speak. A millionaire mindset isn't about always having the right answers. It's about knowing when to pause so you don't keep asking the wrong questions. Stillness isn't escape. Stillness is the place where you drop the mask. Unwasser, you lower your armor. Marital, you return to who you really are. And from that place, the best ideas come. The right decisions rise. And your self-trust gets rebuilt. So if you feel like you're too busy for even 10 minutes of stillness, that's exactly when you need it most. You don't need to do more. You just need to return to yourself consistently, because that's where the millionaire version of you is waiting. I want you to really sit with this question for a moment. When no one's watching you, when there's no role to play, no mask to wear, who are you? Not your name, not your job, not your bank balance. I'm asking you at the deepest level, who do you believe you are? You see, we don't live our lives based on our goals. We live our lives based on our identity. You can set a goal like I want to earn $100,000 this year. But if your inner identity still whispers, I'm just someone who gets by, then every strategy, every effort will eventually sabotage itself, because you can't outgrow a life that's smaller than your self-image. Back in the 1960s, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, the father of modern self-image psychology, made a powerful discovery. Even when people changed their appearance through surgery, if they didn't update how they saw themselves inside, they still behaved like the old version of themselves. They still saw ugly, still felt not enough, still believed they weren't worthy even when their face changed. Why? Because identity lives in the subconscious, and it's stronger than any goal you write on a piece of paper. I remember a time when I believed I was a quitter. I'd start things, then stop. Didn't finish courses, didn't post videos consistently, didn't follow through on my own promises. I set big goals, but deep down I still saw myself as someone who always gives up. And every failure just reinforced that identity. See, that's just who I am. Until one day, I stopped writing goals and started writing a new identity. I am consistent. I finish what I start. I keep my word to myself. I didn't write that to feel good. I wrote it like a new story I was ready to live. And everything changed. Not because I tried harder, but because I started acting like the new version of me that I finally believed in. One of my clients, a single mom, smart, capable, big-hearted, but she kept saying, I'm not the kind of person who can run a business. And you know what? She was right. Because when your identity says, I'm not that kind of person, then every opportunity gets rejected before it even arrives. So I didn't teach her ads. I didn't give her strategies. I helped her rewrite her identity. We wrote it on her wall, I am the creator of a new life. I deserve success, not because of luck, but because I've grown. 3 months later, she launched her first online boutique. She went live on camera smiling in a way she told me, I've never seen myself smile like that before. Let me tell you this, beliefs don't have to be true to be powerful. They just have to be repeated enough. So every time you say, I'm not a good communicator, I always give up, I don't deserve more, you're programming yourself not into who you want to be, but into who you're afraid to stay. But if instead you write a new identity, I am resilient. I create value wherever I go. I'm the kind of person who does hard things. And you live that way, choose that way, act that way, every day. Then eventually, that identity becomes real. You are not the product of your past. You are the masterpiece of the story you're writing today. And if you're ready, I invite you to choose a new identity. Not the identity of fear, but the identity of a millionaire mindset, someone who knows who they are and lives in alignment with it every single day. There's something I want to say clearly, no sugarcoating, just truth. Nobody becomes their best self just by thinking about it. Nobody becomes wealthy, powerful, or peaceful just because they wish to be. Real change, it doesn't come from desire. It comes from consistent action day in and day out, even when nobody's clapping. I know, there are days you wake up full of fire. You say, I'll start writing today, I'll work out, I'll launch that business. But by the afternoon, you're tired. You close your laptop and open YouTube, or scroll TikTok, or binge Netflix. Have you ever been stuck in that cycle, knowing exactly what you need to do, and still not doing it? I've been there too. I spent years living in the world of intentions, not in the world of execution, until one day I realized something that flipped my life. Commitment is the only bridge between ideas and reality. And real commitment, it gets tested when motivation disappears. Your brain doesn't care about your 6-month goal. It cares about what's comfortable right now. That's why consistent action doesn't come from motivation. It comes from your system. And no, you can't wait for the right mood. You act first, the mood follows. I remember when I first committed to posting one video per week. Nobody watched. Week 3, I was exhausted. Week 4, I wanted to quit. But I told myself this video isn't just for today. It's a brick in the future version of me 3 years from now. And I kept going. Not because I felt motivated, but because I made a promise to myself and I meant it. One of my clients, 28 years old, sat on his dream of creating an online course for 2 years. We didn't do anything fancy. We just started one habit, 30 minutes each morning. Write your course script, no matter how you feel. Week 1, full of resistance. Week 2, what's the point? Week 4, first draft done. Month 3, course launched. And here's the magic. It wasn't the course that changed him. It was the consistent action that rewired him. He started to believe I'm someone who creates value because he finally started acting like it. You can say, I want to succeed, but if your actions don't match that belief, your subconscious knows you're lying. We don't attract what we want. We attract what we've become in our habits and our discipline, in the way we show up daily. Every time you take consistent action, you send a powerful message to yourself, I'm someone worth trusting. And from there, confidence doesn't feel like something you need to find. It becomes a natural result of living in alignment with your word. You don't need to do something huge today, just one small thing done every day. Today, write 1 page. Today, study for 15 minutes. Today, record that video even if it's messy. Today, say no to 1 distraction, because every one of those actions is a brick in the version of you that doesn't flinch anymore. If you truly believe the future is counting on you, you'll act like there's no time to waste. Because the truth is, you don't need to wait to be good enough to start. You just need to start so that you can become good enough. So if today is the day you stop living in the land of, I'll do it someday, and you finally step into, I'm doing it now, then comment below, I act as if the future depends on me, because it truly does. Let me ask you to imagine something for a moment. One day you won't be here anymore. Your name will be spoken for the very last time, and all your achievements, all the material things you've built, they'll dissolve into the air. So here's the question. What will you leave behind? Not your bank account, not the car you drove, but how you made people feel, the version of you that inspired them to become more. You see, the millionaire mindset isn't just about having more. It's about becoming the kind of person the world needed to meet. It's about knowing who you are, living fully in alignment with that truth, and leaving behind a path. That makes it easier for others to walk their own. A dear friend of mine, an oncologist, once told me, people near the end of life rarely talk about money. They talk about what they wish they'd done, the hugs they didn't give, the I love yous they never said. Research in positive psychology backs this up. People who live with what they call a legacy mindset, meaning they're aware of what they want to leave behind, they tend to be more resilient in hard times, happier overall, and stronger mentally even in chaos. Why? Because when you're living for something bigger than yourself, you don't give up easily. One of my clients, a startup founder, came to me just wanting to make more money for the family. But during a deep coaching session, he broke down in tears and said, I want my daughter to grow up believing women can do anything. I want that to be my living legacy. From that day on, everything changed. He started investing in education, mentoring kids, building systems that inspire others. And guess what? His business doubled in growth, not because he hustled harder, but because he started living from a higher frequency. So now I turn to you. If you could leave behind just one thing for this world, no matter how small, what would it be? A book, a life lesson, a business that leads with integrity, a generation that finally knows how to love themselves, or maybe just a way of living so true, so kind, so powerful, that when people see you live, they find hope again. I believe this with all my heart. We don't truly die when the heart stops. We fade when our story stops being told. So live your life like you're writing a book that someone someday will pick up when they've lost their way. Live like every choice you make is a marker for someone else to one day say, I saw that, and it made me believe I could do it too. You weren't born just to work and disappear. You're here to live deeply, to open your heart, to give, to leave behind something so real that when others see it, they say that is how a human being can live. With love, with courage, with truth. Because the things you plant in minds will echo forever in hearts. I want you to try something right now if you can. Just close your eyes for a second and imagine this. You're stepping into your dream home. You open the door. You run your hands across the furniture. Morning light pours in through the window. You smell fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. You hear the laughter of the people you love. Can you feel that moment like it's already real? If yes, you just activated one of the most powerful forces of the human mind, vivid visualization. Here's something I've learned. The most successful people I've ever worked with, they weren't the smartest in the room, but they were the ones who visualized their future so clearly that their brain began to believe it was already happening. One of my clients, now the CEO of an 8-figure company, once told me, before I ever signed my first big deal, I imagined the feeling hundreds of times. I practiced the handshake in the mirror. I pictured the deal closed email. I even mentally thanked the partner, all in my head as if it was already done. Neuroscience has a name for this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated experience. And the wild part, your brain doesn't always know the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. So what does that mean for you? It means this: if you practice living in your future right now, eventually your present self will rise to meet that role. You'll start speaking differently, making new decisions, showing up with more ease, more power without forcing it, because your mind already lives at that higher level. One of my closest friends, a single mom who used to live paycheck to paycheck, but in her mind she was already financially free. She wrote gratitude letters to her future every morning. She walked around imagining she was heading to her private office. She called her son my little millionaire. 3 years later, she had 3 streams of passive income. Not because of luck, but because she lived in that future long enough for her actions and identity to align with it. So let me ask you, are you living as if your dream has already happened? I once read about a Harvard study. 2 groups of students were learning to play piano. One group practiced physically. The other only visualized it. After a few weeks, the brain scans of the group, who only imagined, still showed almost the same growth in motor neurons as the group who practiced for real. Why? Because the brain doesn't need it to be real. It just needs repetition, emotion, vivid images. Now, I'm not telling you to daydream and do nothing. I'm telling you to train your millionaire mindset by living there first in your mind. Every morning, give yourself just 5 minutes. No phone, no emails. Just close your eyes and live a day as the person who already has it all. Where do you wake up? Who's beside you? What do you do for a living? How does your heart feel? What are you grateful for? You can't live a bigger life than the quiet beliefs running in the background. And those beliefs, they don't come from affirmations alone. They come from rehearsing your future so vividly that your brain starts to believe it's the norm. You have to meet your future self on the other side of the dream before the world ever gets to see it's real. Do you remember the very first time in your life someone said something to you about money? I do. I was about 6. I wanted this toy at the supermarket, and my mom, tired and overwhelmed, shook her head and said, "Money doesn't grow on trees, honey." I didn't fully understand it back then, but something deep and quiet got programmed into my heart. That money is limited. That money is stress. That money is not meant for me. And I carried that invisible code with me all through my youth. Even when I started making money, I felt guilty spending it on myself. If my bank balance dropped below a certain number, I panicked. I'd ask myself, why is this always so hard? I work so hard. I'm not stupid, right? It took me years to understand I wasn't broke because I was lazy. I was broke because my subconscious beliefs didn't allow me to hold on to wealth. You see, the subconscious mind gets wired the strongest between the ages of 0 and 7, and everything you hear, see, and feel during that time becomes your default operating system. One of my clients, now a successful real estate investor, once told me, I grew up in a family that criticized wealthy people. They called them greedy, fake, corrupt. And when I started making good money, I felt ashamed. I started blowing money unconsciously, like I didn't deserve it. He didn't have a money problem. He had a belief problem. What about you? Have you ever felt awkward receiving a large amount of money? Do you feel uncomfortable when someone says you're going to be rich? Do you quietly believe things like, if I get rich, I'll lose my freedom, or love, or integrity? Those aren't truths. They're just codes. And the good news, you can reprogram them. I worked with a woman who was wildly talented and almost successful, but kept falling just short of her big break. She told me my dad used to say, a rich woman is a lonely woman. I never believed that, or so I thought. But I've sabotaged every single relationship as soon as I get close to a breakthrough. We did some deep work, and she cried, because that belief wasn't even hers. It had just been repeated so many times that it felt like truth. Here's something you need to know. Your subconscious doesn't care if a belief is true or false. It only cares about what's repeated. So if you repeat every single day, I'm lucky, I deserve abundance, I welcome wealth with open arms, your mind will start building a foundation for wealth. But if you keep saying I'm not good with money, I'm not sure I deserve it, then no matter how many courses you take, you'll find a way to ruin the very things you worked hard for. So here's what I want you to do today. Write down 3 old money beliefs you've inherited from your family, culture, or environment. Ask, is this still serving me? Then write a new belief that supports the version of you you're becoming. For example, old money makes people greedy. New money amplifies good when used with integrity. You don't need to make more money first. You need to clear the invisible walls in your mind around wealth. Because as Napoleon Hill once said, riches never come by chance. They come to those who believe completely in themselves. Most people are waiting, waiting for a better market, waiting for someone to notice them, waiting to feel confident, waiting for that so-called perfect timing. But let me say this straight, as someone who's walked through both light and darkness, opportunities don't belong to those who wait. They belong to those who create. I had an old friend. He was an IT guy with a stable job. He had a dream to build a digital learning platform where kids could learn through games. But you know what he did for 4 whole years? He wrote the idea in his notebook, said he was saving it for when the time is right, when I have funding, when my kid's a little older. And then one day, he got laid off, company downsized, job gone. And with nothing left to lose, he finally started building. No big funding, no fancy team, just one tiny prototype game. And guess what? Now he has millions of downloads and 2 successful rounds of funding. Why? Because he stopped waiting and started creating. They say opportunity only knocks once. I don't believe that. Opportunity knocks every single day, but only the people who are already moving will hear it. Here's a rule I live by. If you're not creating your own opportunities, you're letting someone else write your life story. When you hand over power to the outside world, you become a victim of weather markets, moods, or stock prices. But when you take action, even the smallest step, you take back authorship of your life. I remember when I was 27, I stood outside this massive startup conference. I didn't have a ticket. I didn't know anyone. All I had were a few pages of my pitch in a folder. A part of me whispered, don't bother them. You're not ready. Just wait a few more years. But another part, louder, braver, asked, if not now, then when? So I walked in, started a conversation, asked for just 3 minutes to share my idea with someone. That someone opened a door for me that changed my entire career. You don't need to do something crazy to create opportunity. Sometimes it's as simple as sending that email you've been putting off, posting that blog even if it's not perfect, making the call, knocking on the door, speaking up. I once asked a client, if this chapter of your life were a story, would the title be I waited and nothing happened, or I took the leap and everything began? Because here's the truth. The universe responds to movement, not wishes, not hopes, but motion. Every action you take, every call, every draft, every awkward first step, it's a signal that says I'm ready. And the world begins to rearrange itself in your favor. So stop waiting. Don't wait to be chosen. Don't wait for society's green light. Don't wait for the world's permission. If you have a vision, that is your permission. If you feel the pull, that is your signal. Millionaire minds don't wait for perfect conditions. They create from imperfect ones. They don't say, I hope. They say, I begin. So if you're standing at a crossroads right now, choose to take the step. Even if your hands are shaking, even if nothing's clear yet, even if all you've got is a tiny spark in your chest, that's more than enough. Picture this: two people, same dream, same talent, same opportunity. One waits for inspiration, the other commits rain or shine, tired or lazy. 10 years later, one is still out there looking for motivation. The other is living the dream they once wrote down. So the question isn't, what do you want? It's how disciplined are you willing to be to keep your promises to yourself. I've worked with a lot of talented people, some even brilliant, but you know who wins. The one who's more consistent, not the most gifted. The one who wakes up earlier, not the smartest. The one who stays the course, not the one with the most resources. An old friend of mine, a graphic designer, dreamed of launching his own brand. He gave himself just 30 minutes a day before work to learn about branding, marketing, and product building. No spotlight, no applause, but he showed up every day for 3 years. Today, he doesn't work for anyone else. His brand is in 7 countries because he built it in silence with discipline. See, discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is choosing every day to stay loyal to what matters, even when you're not in the mood. Discipline frees you from the trap of fluctuating emotions. It gives you a place to stand when everything else feels shaky. People without discipline, they get run by emotions. People with discipline, they lead their emotions and therefore they lead their results. One of my clients, a fitness coach, told me, I don't love waking up at 5 a.m. I don't love dieting, but I love the feeling of being someone who keeps their word. That gives me a kind of freedom I never knew before. Do you feel that real freedom isn't doing whatever you want? It's having the power to do what you've promised yourself. Studies show that willpower is a muscle. Use it and it grows. And if you train yourself with small disciplined habits, you're building your ability to make faster decisions, focus deeper, delay gratification, resist temptation. A successful person isn't more special than you. They're just the ones who kept doing the right thing while others stopped. So ask yourself, do you want a life of freedom that's really just impulsiveness, or a life rooted in values, true freedom, and a legacy that lasts? Because discipline today, a legacy tomorrow. What you do in the dark becomes light for those who come after. I remember a single mom who once told me, I wake up at 4:30 a.m. Not because I like it, but because I want my child to grow up knowing that you don't have to be rich to have choices, you just need commitment. She didn't talk much about millionaire mindset, but she lived like someone rich in willpower. Millionaire thinking isn't about daydreaming. It's not scrolling and listening to nice quotes. It's this: can you keep your word to yourself without applause? Can you build habits one brick at a time toward the castle you're meant to live in? I'm not here to tell you to do more. I'm here to ask you, are you living in alignment with the person you know you're meant to become? And if not, where are you willing to start today? I used to think I'll start when I'm more confident. Wait until I'm ready. Wait for the right timing. But you know what actually happened. I waited a long time. And guess what? Things never got perfect the way I imagined. Until one day I just started. Still unsure. Still full of doubts. Still with shaky hands. And that one action completely rewired my belief system. One of my clients, a gifted writer, once told me, I have dozens of unfinished drafts. Every time I sit down to write, a voice in my head says, you're not good enough. Don't embarrass yourself. We worked together, and I said, you don't need to write a masterpiece. Just write 10 minutes a day. So she started a paragraph, a page, a chapter. And now she's not only finished her first book, she's helping others face the same fears she once had, because she took action before she felt worthy. Here's what I want you to remember. Feelings aren't your compass. Action is. Neuroscience shows this. When you take action even small, your brain rewires. It releases dopamine, the progress and motivation chemical. The more you act, the more you trust yourself. In other words, belief doesn't come before action. Action creates belief. So be honest with me. What are you putting off right now just because you think you're not ready? Are you waiting to stop being afraid before you begin? But let me ask you, if you keep waiting, where will you be 6 months from now? A year from now, I've seen too many people grow old in the waiting room of life. They think if they just take one more course, prepare a few more months, become a little better, then they'll finally be ready. But ready doesn't come unless you decide I will act from who I am today to become who I want to be tomorrow. I remember the first time I stood in front of over 500 people. I had practiced, rehearsed in front of a mirror, scripted every line. But minutes before I walked on stage, I panicked. Cold hands, dry mouth, heart pounding. A part of me screamed, "You're not ready, cancel, run." But I stepped up anyway. And 30 seconds in, I was no longer the same person. I don't remember everything I said. I just know this A door opened one that would have stayed closed forever if I hadn't acted. The universe doesn't respond to hesitation. It responds to signals of commitment. Every step you take is a message sent to the invisible switchboard above I'm ready to receive. Not when you're perfect, not when you're fearless, but when you move despite the fear. I'm not saying this because I've always been brave. I'm saying it because I know what it's like to doubt yourself so deeply. And I've learned there's no medicine stronger than action, no therapy deeper than starting. And when you start, you begin to believe. And when you believe, you become.